I have learned in pursuing multiplying disciples, leaders, churches, and businesses, 8 things. I've learned a new thing, man. It used to be 7 things. Now it's 8 things in 10 years. So, and they build on one another. So, if you go to onebody.church, okay, these things actually had a little ebook written, and you can have that ebook, but it's onebody.church. Under resources, under books, is the 7 things. I haven't added the 8th thing to it yet. But what I want to do in the next 2 sessions is I want to share these principles regarding multiplying disciples, leaders, churches, and businesses that the whole world might know. And if you guys haven't figured it out, I'm a storyteller. So all of these things will be interspersed with stories, but they're actually what Jesus told me to do was to tell my story. So this is my effort to be a blessing, to share some principles with you that I think are they're definitely scriptural, and we can't be any more spiritual than we are scriptural, right? So here's what the first thing that I learned. 1. So what I'll try to do is I'll do 3 or 4 in this one, and I'll do 3 or 4 in the next one. But 1, oh, there they are. So 1 is, if we take care of the depth of our ministry, God takes care of the breadth. I'll say it again. If we take care of the depth of our ministry, God will take care of the breadth. In John 17:3, this is what Jesus says. He says, "This is life eternal, to know the one true God and Jesus Christ whom he has sent." Intimacy is the foundation of multiplying disciples, leaders, churches, and businesses. Paul said he counted all things but loss that he might what? Know him. The power of his resurrection, the fellowship of his suffering, being made conformable to his image. Intimacy, oneness with Jesus and the Father is what Jesus prayed for. He prays in John 17 that they might be what? The first 11, that they might be one with him, as I am with you, that they might be one with us. Why? That the world might know. The why is intimacy. He's praying for that they will be so connected in intimacy of relationship with Jesus and the Father and with one another that the world might know. So this was my single biggest mistake is around this one. Is I had a insatiable, since coming to faith, hunger and thirst to know him, not to know about him, but to experience intimacy with God. So I lost my first wife. I told you this story, right? So I lost my first wife to pancreatic cancer at 45. And I bet a lot of you guys have actually done the study Experiencing God, right? So experiencing God, point number 4 says, God speaks by his Spirit through his word, prayer, circumstances, and his church to reveal himself, his purposes, and his way. But just like we said, God speaks, right? He wants to reveal himself to us. He wants us to know him. And so I lost my first wife to pancreatic cancer, and I was a mess. Like I was just all 5 kids still at home. So you guys will find this funny. But cathartically, I'd always been in actually own a gym now, but I'd always been in the gym, always been a workout guy, lifting weights, but I decided that I would do a bodybuilding show. And it wasn't that funny. So when you do a bodybuilding show, there's like lots of crazy stuff that you do. So eat meals every couple hours, specific things, lots of cardio, lifting 6 days a week, But what I wanted to do was I basically wanted to honor my wife. So it was a cathartic thing. I was obsessed with like getting ready for this show to be on stage. And I actually posed to a song that has, have you ever lost a loved one that you thought died before their time? Maybe it's God speaking. So I wanted to honor her. And but during that time frame, the 12 to 16 weeks that it took to get ready for this bodybuilding show, I would go to LA Fitness and I would be in the sauna at about 5 or 5:30 in the morning, right? And one day, like I'm going through this Experiencing God Bible study by Blackaby, right? And I'm on that point, number 4. And I'm praying, God, I want to know you. I need you to reveal yourself to me. And stuff like this happens. I'm up on the top shelf, I guess, of the sauna thing, praying. And I look up, and there's literally a guy that weighs over 300 pounds. Like I don't know if you've ever been in a sauna, but there's the heater, right? And this guy is down on his knees in front of the heater. And I'm like, I look at him, and I go, are you praying? Stupid, right? He goes like, yeah. So I'm like, wow, this has got to be God. Because I was just praying about that, right? So I get down on my knees next to the guy in the sauna and begin to pray with him at LA Fitness at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, okay? Crazy, right? So then it turns out, I said, what are you praying for, man? He says, well, my name's PJ, and my wife, been married a long time, and she's on her way to Chicago because her mom's dying. And this will be the last time that she gets to see her mom. Whoa. I was like, bro, I just lost my wife. So I shared basically that story with him and the gospel. My story and the gospel. That was before I had learned any of this stuff. And that guy goes, I'll never forget this. And I never saw him again. But maybe I was being like Rod Friend. Like that guy that poured into me and then left. And I poured into him. And I don't know what happened with PJ. But I know when I got trained in these ways that the foundation of all of this, it's not the tools. The tools are just tools. Intimacy is the foundation for multiplying with God, is the foundation for multiplying disciples, leaders, and churches. You do not manufacture movement. It comes from relational intimacy with God. Number 1, if you don't get this right, none of this stuff works. If we take care of the depth, he takes care of the breadth. And we don't, FYI, we don't produce fruit, we bear fruit. Jesus is the true vine. We bear fruit. And by the way, we bear fruit. It's a team sport. We are inclusive. So who measure themselves among themselves and compare themselves among themselves are not wise. It's all Jesus's fruit. It's not like, oh, look, we sell multiplication, the sizzle. Multiplication is the byproduct. Multiplication is a byproduct of being the type of disciples worth multiplying. That's the key It's about the depth. He takes care of the breadth, and we corporately, from micro to macro, are bearing fruit that brings him glory. I didn't even use logos to figure that out, but that's true, bro. 2, pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. So Curtis poured into me. I spent 4 full days in Dadeville, Alabama, learning the basics of DMM and CPM. Curtis, I think it's 36 hours or 36 to 40 hours that I spent with Curtis in his home, him teaching me these things. And then I went back to Tampa to begin to obey with my wife from my home. I knew no one else. But if you've ever met Curtis Sargent, we're completely opposites. He's an introvert. He's probably on the spectrum, okay? And we're really different. Like, he asked me, like, hey, how could I improve this? I said, man, you suck at marketing, man. like you've done all this stuff, man. You've been like to China and seen these movies. You trained Yin Kai and done all this stuff, man. Yeah, I can help you, man. Like, I was arrogant, man. I knew how to produce, okay? I was successful in business, you know? And I was like, you're not very good at this, man. That's the truth. So I thought, like, dude, I'm going to go back to Tampa and I'm going to get after it, man. I'm going to get after it. Like, I know how to close. I know how to sell. You know, I learned these patterns and principles, okay? I'm like, bro, Bob, you got to tell your story, tell God's story, meet in these groups, okay? Ask these questions, okay? All right, let's go through it. You got it? All right, call me if you got questions. Okay, next. Hey, Terry, look, you got to tell your story, tell God's story, meet in these groups. This is the format to follow, okay? These are the questions, okay? All right, let's go through one. You got it? Good. Call me if you got questions. All right. Raheem, bro, this is the deal. You got to tell your story, tell God's story, meet in these groups, ask these questions, okay? And then keep doing that and show other people how to do that too. That's the key. You got to take this and give that to other people to do the same thing. You got it? Call me if you got questions. All right. So I basically was able to, with a few other people that were equally as dysfunctional as me, I made disciples. I started 400 of those groups. And I was miserable because I was trying to achieve. I was trying to close. So do you guys, anybody remember what the commandment is in Matthew 28? What's the commandment? The actual commandment. What are we commanded to do? Say that again, Terry. I'm glad you were listening. Make disciples, not start groups. Man, I hadn't made one disciple. Or maybe I had made some bad disciples, okay? So Curtis, he was talking to me, right? So this is over time, and he would come. I want you to understand this. Curtis would actually spend the 3rd month. You can call me whenever you want to. And Curtis would continue to say things like, Lee, have you ever considered pouring deeply into the few? I'm like, no. It hadn't occurred to me. And like, he was coaching me though, of like you're going really wide, not deep, with like Amanda. And so I told Curtis, I said, I looked at him through that lens of production. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. This is working. It got to be so painful. Like, I was miserable. The number one wasn't there because I was going really wide and not deep with a few. You got to realize it's by depth that we actually get of being the type of disciples worth multiplying, that we get to multiplication, that we bear fruit that way. Everybody in here, you need to make one disciple. Who's your boy? Dawson Trotman, the navigator dude, bro? Who's your boy? Who's your girl? Who's your woman? Who's your man? Obedient disciples will gather. But you have to start with a disciple, with one. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. The tools are just tools, okay? But you have to spend time in the model, time in the assist, and you need to be in the watch phase for a long time. Curtis would meet with the third month. He'd say you can call whenever you want to. But every summer for 3 years, Curtis Sargent would come to Tampa. Who does this? For 3 years, he would come to Tampa, and he would spend 30 to 45 days in Tampa, in my home, with other disciples and churches. Always, never like hierarchical at all. This is completely organic and decentralized. There aren't any buildings. There aren't any clergy. There's no programs, okay? And we definitely didn't have a lot of money. But that began to emerge. And what had to happen was it had to get so painful. It had to get so painful till I heard him. Till I heard him say, "Do you trust me?" You know how he told Peter, "Do you love me?" I didn't hear that. He said to me as I was praying, "Do you trust me?" And you know how I responded? Just like Peter, "You know I trust you." And then what flashed into my mind, Holy Spirit, everything I was doing that he hadn't told me to do. And this came so true to me, it's when I stopped doing the things that he hadn't told me to do. And I only did what I heard him saying with the ones that he gave to me. I had a list. He showed me the ones that I was supposed to be pouring into. So when I began pouring into those 3 and training them to do the same thing, okay, I didn't even know about the 139, bro. I just knew that I had to pour deeply into the few who would obey no matter what the cost. That's when we started getting to generations of disciples and churches. You want to know how long 1 and 2 took, though? Hey, you take care of the depth, he takes care of the breadth. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. 3 years. We sell that stuff. Everybody used to, like during that time, they'd go, "You got 400 groups, man. That's amazing, dude. That's success." That was failure. They wanted like we count how many. Like we measure quantity, not quality. It's about the depth of intimacy, and it's about the depth that you pour into that person. And this is how simple it is. Like right now, you guys actually have responsibility with it, just the horrible model that I've given to you already. Like you guys have some stuff that you can actually, what do you know and are doing that your disciple does not know and is not doing? That's it. What do you know and are doing that your disciple does not, that you need to share with them? That's how simple discipleship is. What do I know that I'm doing that my disciple doesn't know or is not doing? That's what you share with them. Here's some tools to help you with it. Go. Isn't that what he did? He's like, "Okay, hey, here's what I want you to do. Hey, follow me, I'll make you to become fishers of men, okay? Hang out with me, okay? All right, you guys go out, do that, Find the person of peace, laborers are few, go out there, heal the sick, cast out demons, share the gospel with them, okay? They came back, okay, yeah, now tweak that this way. All right, you got it. That's what he did. So 1 and 2 took me 3 years to learn. And I just saying these things to be encouraging to you, okay? Because look at the raw material that he will use. Like if we actually realize that it's in our weakness that he gets glory. Like he will take ordinary people and do extraordinary things. So praise the Lord Jesus. He takes an orphan, abandoned, abused, addicted, lost a spouse, obsessive business guy, greedy, and he redeems that and uses that to bring glory to himself, because the communication of our faith becomes effectual by acknowledging every good thing that is in us by Christ Jesus. How does any of it work? Jesus. It's all Jesus. It's none of us. It's all of him. That takes all the pressure off, by the way. It's like, hey, you totally have to do this, okay? Like, I'm going to do it, but like, it's not going to work out if it's me. With that, apart me, so just fill in the blank. Apart from me, you can do nothing. How freeing is that, actually? So I try to have people do this, Raheem. I hope they're better at it than you were, okay? Everybody make a fist. Squeeze it really tight. Feel it, feel it, feel it. Let's produce, let's achieve, let's get to there. Let's conquer Everest. Now let your hand go. Let it be open. Does that feel better? Yeah. So where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Christians in our country need to get to free. So 1 and 2 is take care of the depth, he takes care of the breadth. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. Number 3, this is really encouraging, okay? This is really encouraging to me, okay? Keep doing what you're doing. You will get better at it. I don't care what you do, okay? Like everything in life, okay, is a question of competency or confidence or both. So if like we start from intimacy and we begin to share some simple, reproducible tools with other people that want to obey from that same way, at first, how good at it do you think you're going to be? Horrible. It's okay. But the more that you repeat it, the more that you do it, the better you will get at it, and the more he will use you, right? Because he wants to see that we're faithful. He takes care of the fruitful. You have to be faithful. So Jesus said this. So the third one is greater works than these will you do. He wants all of us to be faithful. He'll take care of the fruitful. But if we keep doing what we're doing, we will get better at it. Not only individually, but we will improve collectively. If Raheem's obeying in Memphis, okay, and Damien and Lee are obeying in Tampa and Fort Myers, and people are coming to faith, getting baptized, and we're pouring into a few, isn't that the same thing in Memphis from his household to Damien's household to Lee and Stacy's household to Terry's household? Like, isn't that Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, unto the uttermost parts of the world with one another? That's basically what you're saying, man. We could have just done your devotion and gone home, bro. Here's the thing. We win if we don't quit. But what happens? These all build with one another. So Jesus said the kingdom's like 2 kids, 2 boys. He said, hey, I want you to go out and to work in my kingdom. And the son goes, you got it. I'm going. Then what'd he do? Didn't obey. Second kid says, I'm not doing that. But then he obeyed. The key is we win if we don't quit, if we actually do it. So the point is, people ask, where do you spend your time? I try to spend my time the same way Jesus spent his time, with the few who will obey no matter what the cost. So this stuff I'm telling you, It's simple to understand. It's not easy. It's simple. It'll cost you everything. You're going to die. You're going to lose friends. You're going to be lied about. All they that live godly in Christ Jesus shall what? Suffer persecution. We grow in 4 ways. One, and we grow in self-feeding. God speaks to us by his word and in prayer. So we grow in intimacy through self-feeding, the word of God and prayer. We grow in community with one another. Like, in other words, the essence of this actually begins to occur, right? So we grow and like, whoa, that's God. That's how we connect. Like, if you get it, like I'm like the guy with his hair on fire, okay? But there's a spiritual substance to these guys, okay? That like, it's like, whoa, that's God. Wow. Same thing, Raheem. Like, what is that? God. So we grow in community with one another. That's because of Jesus. But the 4th way that we grow is through persecution and hard times. Most, I don't mean it bad, they won't pay the price. It's the few. So Jesus, worst marketer in the world. Watch it. Horrible marketer. Okay? Horrible. Hey, who do you guys, all the disciples are following him, okay? Joe. I'm going to pretend I'm Jesus. I know it's a stretch. Joe, way to go. You have to eat my flesh and drink my blood if you're going to be my disciple. Don't do it. Yeah? Nah. Yeah. Bro, hey, way to go. You need to sell everything that you have. Give it to the poor. Surrender your entire life and come follow me. Sell it all. Leave it all. Come follow me. Wow, everybody's leaving. These are the only ones that I got left right here. These are the only ones. Hey, this is why he was the worst marketer. Hey, you guys want to leave too? You guys want to go too? So I'm like, wait a minute, Jesus, it's the same way I did with Curtis. Dude, that's all you got left, bro. You're messing up. He was ruthless to get to the kind of disciple that was worth multiplying. That's what we have to do. Willing to spend and be spent. So, story. I'm in Israel before Jesus. Israel before Jesus. I'm in Haifa. I'm buying drugs in the Holy Land outside of a bar. So I think the guy's reaching into his jacket to get this plate of hash that I'm going to buy, okay? And he pulls out a .45 caliber pistol. So I've been drinking a little bit. So I thought I was going to go all Jackie Chan. Hey, I was going to like, I'm getting it, you know? And then I was going to, and then run. Now, I didn't speak any Hebrew, and he didn't speak any English. But the next thing he did was cock that pistol. Don't shoot! Don't shoot. He was holding a gun on me. Everybody raise their hands up like this. This is the universal sign of what? This is what Jesus wants us to do. But he doesn't hold a gun on you. He wants us to do this and not to quit. Keep doing what you're doing. You'll get better at it, but it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You're going to suffer. You're going to be ridiculed, okay? You might even die. It's worth it. He's worth it. So that one, that took me to through about year 3 or 4. And that got me to number 4. It took me till 2016, the end of 2016, to get, take care of the depth, he'll take care of the breadth. Pour deeply into the few who obey, no matter what the cost. Here you keep doing what you're doing, you'll get better at it. Number 4, obey. Read Matthew 5:19. Obey and train others. You cannot pass on what you do not possess. So here's the thing, is you have to be a practitioner of these things, not a theoretician. So people that write books about these things, high knowledge, lower obedience, lower spreading, not a disciple. Everybody in here can ride a bike, right? Learn to ride a bike, okay? I just want to know who in here learned to ride a bike by reading a book. Did anybody learn to ride a bike by reading a book? Nope. Had to see a bicycle. Somebody had to get on the bicycle, push it a little bit, pedal, 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 crash. And then it was like, what did you have to do to learn to ride the bike? Well, after you crash, you had to what? Back up. And get on the bicycle, right? But what if you just said, like, I guess you weren't meant to be a bike rider, you know? Like, hey, you tried it, didn't work out, sorry. See how they build? Now at the juncture, you know, how long does it really take you to see a bike, to somebody to help you to ride the bike, okay, till you don't need any help riding the bike? How long do you think that takes? So like short, brief. The model, there's only one. I shared this question, don't answer with it. There's only one person that didn't have to see a bicycle before riding a bicycle. No, but good answer. Always answer Jesus, yeah. Jesus, like, it's always Jesus. No matter what the security question is, Jesus. Right, you know. Your favorite animal, Jesus, you know. First kiss, Jesus. You know, anything, just Jesus, you know. It doesn't make any difference. The answer is Jesus, okay. You are so holy. The model is brief. The assist is brief. But let me give you an example, okay, is I'm going to pick on somebody. I'll pick on Bob. I've done that before. Like Bob's known how to ride a bicycle for a long time, okay? But if Bob said, called, if whoever it was, your mom, your dad, if they were still here, if he picked up his phone, he said, hey, you know, Dad, I'm in Memphis today, and I really want to ride my bike. And yeah, I know you're in Minnesota, but could you come here and be with me and help me ride my bike? It means so much to me, Dad. That's ridiculous, right? There came a time that Bob knew how to do the wheelie, you know, to jump over things, to turn, to do all the stuff of bike riding. There was a time where it was appropriate, like after that Dad could go inside, you know, and turn on Sports Center. He's got it. It's all good. So the training cycle is the hardest thing for people to get here around all of these patterns and principles. It's model, assist, watch, and launch or leave. So Curtis, in 2016, he trained me in March of 2013. By the summer of 2016, where Zume, that thing, is launching, we're doing a conference in Tampa, Florida with disciples and churches from a lot of other people around the United States, okay, in Tampa, Florida. And he says to me, I think you got it. Like 13 to 14, 14 to 15, 15 to 16, over 3 years. The model and the assist was 3 months. First, once a month, once a week for the first month, twice a week the second month, third month, many times as you want to. Over the next few years, 30 to 45 days in Tampa. Model, assist, watch phase had begun. Came back, inspected, And I said to Curtis, I said, whoa, dude, not so fast. Like, there's lots of stuff that I don't know yet. And he said, stop whining. You sound like the Ephesian elders. Literally, you sound like the Ephesian elders. He said, I'm always going to answer the phone. You know what? Our phone calls are remarkably different today after 10 years. Curtis is saying he gets way more out of me than I get out of him now. That's appropriate. But you have to obey to be able to pass on to others. I don't have to talk to Amanda too much. I don't talk to Damien too much. I don't actually talk to the elders in Tampa too much anymore because I did the training cycle over 10 years with them. Model, assisted, watched, and left. But I had to be doing that from the most simple expression of the church in my home with my wife. I had to do that as image bearers, obeying, telling our story, telling God's story, okay, pouring deeply into the few, going through ridiculously hard times where I thought I was dying, but had to keep doing obeying and training others. All I'm doing here, FYI, is it's not even that good, actually. Like, everybody's so kind, okay? It's not that great. But God will take like that and do something good with it, man, because he's faithful. But obey and train others. So I used to tell, I'm done here, this is number 4. So I used to tell people when I came up and I spoke, I said, only with expectations comes disappointment. And that's really true. So if I can just get you to like completely lower your expectations of me, okay, then I won't disappoint you. So I honestly think I've achieved that. So those 4 things. So I want you to understand this. So the first 4, the next 4, it took me literally from 2013 through, I stayed in Tampa and did that. And I didn't start going to my first in 2017, okay, is where I began to go to Africa. So I had a growing strategy in Tampa of disciples, leaders, and churches. And that's where it all was. One body was just a dream of like, I think the Lord is like, there's just one body. And the church in Fort Myers is not going to be called one body because people think organizationally. But we all are a part of that one body. So I started going to, I met a guy and I went to Mozambique, Africa, and I trained a guy and his wife in their home. And then I took him with me and I went to Uganda. And I trained a guy named Judah Gaba, who was my translator, for 6 days in 6 different villages in Uganda. There are literally thousands and thousands of disciples and churches across Uganda, the districts. So then I went, that's starting. I met a guy from Mauritius, and I start to coach the same thing. Pour deeply into Jude, pour deeply into Kenny, okay? I got a guy named Nathan that I take with me to South Sudan. You know where these bookmarks came from? They came from being in a village of people like, they don't understand this, man. We created that tool, and there are literally tens of thousands of those all around the world, those bookmarks, man. Because me and another guy went to South Sudan and started to figure out how to pass on, how to obey and train others among the Toposa, the GA, the Nyangakong. And these are unreached, unengaged people groups, okay? So we watched it from those 4 things over 4 years, from house to house, city to city, nation to nation, multiplying disciples, leaders, and churches. Relationally, I don't get ahead of myself, but that all happened in 4 years. I was in a big hurry at first, man. So if you ponder those things, it's the same way everywhere with everyone. Intimacy, you take care of the depth, he takes care of the breadth. Pour deeply into the few that he gives to you. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't quit. Obey. and train others. Those are the first four. Last four things. And so the fifth thing is simple things grow, simple things multiply, complex things do not. So I could do a silly illustration here. So good things multiply, bad things multiply. But watch this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do simple things grow, simple things multiply. I'm going to use you, okay? Give me a piece of paper. There you go. Just tear one out. Okay. So he's going to, it's okay. I need for you to share this with one person, okay? And then you can, then after you share it with that one person, they can share, okay? And then you can go and share with another person and they can share, okay? So you're sharing, okay, but they have to share that. Don't go till I tell you to, okay?
Am I making it or explaining it?
Yeah. No. You're just making that, okay? You're showing that to them. They have to draw it, okay? You have to see it, okay? Then they have to pass it on.
Okay.
Got it? That's the picture.
Gotcha.
Got it?
Yep.
So, okay, give me your pen.
Oh.
Thank you. Nope, not yet. Sit. Okay? All right, somebody else? Okay? Luke 2. Here we go. Piece of paper. This one.
Here we go.
Here's a picture. The same thing, okay? I want you to be able to pass that on to one other person, okay? And then they have to draw that, okay? And then they have to pass that on to other people, and they have to pass it on. So once you make it, your person shows it to you, okay? You have to do it, okay? Then you have to pass it on. Are you following me?
So I have to make it?
You have to make it.
Okay.
Hey, sorry.
So I have to make it to someone
You have to
else.
make it, show it to them. They have to show it to you, okay? Then they have to go. They have to
Okay.
see it. They have to see it,
They have to do it,
do it,
and then go.
and then they can go and share it.
Okay.
Okay? Then after they do that, when they go do that, you can go get another one, okay?
Do you need me to show you I can do it?
No, I think you got
Okay.
it. Okay. All right, one more. I need one other person, okay? Who do I want to pick on, okay? Who do I want to vote? You can't leave yet. You guys can't go and do this yet. This is simple things grow, simple things multiply. Yeah, you're getting picked on. Here we go. I need a piece of paper. Okay? Now I got a pen. I took his pen. I'll give it back. Okay? Needs to tear it out. Okay, so you have to be able to draw this for them, okay? And then you have to see them draw it back, and then they have to pass it on, okay? We'll just do it this way. Okay? These are the three pictures. Everybody here, if you have this picture, this was shown to you, and you were able to reproduce it, okay? How many? Raise your hand if you have a smiley face. All right, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 smiley faces. Okay, well, awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, who's got a frowny face? Okay, here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Cool? Okay, 12. All right. I just gave up on that thing. Still, big numbers there, right? Okay. All right. How many people have this monstrosity? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. All right. Oh, my bad. Oh, you weren't done yet, man. You didn't get it done. Yeah. Okay. Simple things grow. Simple things multiply. Complex things do not. Okay. So this is illustrative that's pretty simple, right? That's pretty simple, right? That's pretty complex, right? And not even that complex, right? But you got to draw it. You got to make sure that they can do it, okay? So here, what do we learn from this, okay? Is that good things can multiply, right? Bad things can multiply. Cancer multiplies. We don't want to multiply cancer. We got to be disciples worth multiplying. But complex things do not multiply. Make sense? So what we're looking to do is to pour deeply into the few with simple tools that can multiply. Disciples, leaders, churches, and businesses. Simple things grow. Simple things multiply. What else did you learn about that? Like you had to, how many times did you have to draw that for them to get this? How many times did that take? One time, right? Were they able to do it after you actually drew it for them? Like immediately, right? Fast, right? And they could immediately pass it on too, right? What's a disciple? One that hears, obeys. Are you seeing what I'm saying? There you go. That's number 5. Number 6. It's amazing the way that they're on the, 6. It is always relational before it's organizational. So let me point out something in our context where we have challenges. We have short relational ties, and we think organizationally, not relationally. We do. We want to think about how to organize it before we have it. Like people will take this training and they'll go, oh, let me show you how I can make that better. All right, not arguing with you, but that's not going to work. You have to do it. You have to make one disciple. You have to model. You have to model and assist. Like, watch this. If you don't know how to tell your story, you never practice it, you can't teach somebody, train somebody how to do it. If you don't ever share the gospel, you can't train somebody to share the gospel. If you don't have a simple church that meets in your home that identifies as the most simple expression of the church, can you multiply that? Can you multiply that if you don't have it? No. That's the point. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying if we want to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches, that simple expression of it, you have to have it in order to be able to pass it on, okay? And that's a relationship with a person and with a group of people intentionally that get that. So you cannot organize it until you have it. We grow in community with one another. So like if I hung out in Memphis, I guarantee you I'm going to be chopping it up with Raheem. Guarantee you, okay? Like why? We got stuff in common, man. You know? He's about hip hop. I'm about hip hop.
Make a beatbox.
Yeah. So, but the point is like we're already in the tribe, bro. So I'm going to check it out. Like, I'm going to connect. Where do you think those guys connect? How they knew who to connect with, man? Like, if you're about this, watch this. In Kenya, I can immediately connect with people in Kenya that I know, with these people that are walking in these ways, and we can, like, totally do that relationally. Who's in charge of that? Jesus? Where do we learn that from? Bible? We can totally do, there are 58 one another's in the Bible. 58 one another's. Love one another, provoke one another into love and good works, pray for one another, admonish one another. There's a lot, those are one another's. You know who you have to do the one another's with? One another. It's relational, always, before it's organizational. There's no sense in trying to organize it until you have it. Admit it, there are differences of administrations and differences of operations, but the self-same spirit. So the reality is, sharing with Bob, you got Acts chapter 1, right? After that, the Holy Ghost has come upon you. You shall be witnesses unto me in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. You got Acts chapter 2, right? You see them meeting from house to house, okay? They're doing all that. And like it's being multiplied across the city. People are sharing the gospel. They're moving from house to house. They're continuing steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and breaking of bread, including the Lord's Supper, having all things in common. Totally like, doesn't that sound so cool? Yeah, man, that's cool. It's really awesome, right? Then you get to Acts chapter 6. This is all the church of churches that's in Jerusalem, right? And then the widows are being neglected in the daily administration. Where did they get that from? James wasn't even written yet, which is probably theologically the first book, the first chronological book of the New Testament, where it says pure religion and undefiled is to take care of the orphans and the widows and keep yourself unspotted from the world. That's not even written yet. How they knew they were supposed to take care of those widows in the daily administration? Somebody talked to them. So they're caring for that. You actually watch Matthew 25 happening because they did have what Jesus said. Hey, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. I was in prison, you visited me. I was a stranger and you. Yeah, so we're supposed to do all of Jesus' commandments. When you did it unto the least of these, my brothers and sisters, Jesus has favorites, the least, the lost, the last. So they were totally obeying that from, as disciples, churches emerged, and then you were actually seeing the transformation of the culture as salt and light on earth. It could be heard and it could be seen. Praise God. That's cool. Does that I'm compelled by that. FYI, that's the same thing that we're talking about. So it's always relational before it's organizational. So if we actually existed inside of, hey, everything I have is yours. What if we actually realized, hey, we can love one another with a pure heart fervently. And that administration and operations would flow out of relational intimacy with God and with one another, in community with one another, and that they can spread from house to house, city to city, region to region, nation to nation. And that's really the Father's heart. So I'll give a silly illustration here. Is Memphis. If we wanted to do the laundry of everybody in the whole city of Memphis, okay? We wanted to take care of doing all the laundry. Now, a way of doing that would be we could pick out all the zip codes and we could buy property and we could build massive laundromats with industrial washers and dryers, okay? Now, this would cost a lot of money because we got to pay for the property. We got to pay the washers and dryers, okay? We got to be able to communicate to zip codes what time they're supposed to bring their laundry to these centralized places, okay? Like, this is going to be hard. Remember, simple things grow, simple things multiply. It's always relational before it's organizational. But that's a way of doing it. Or what if we just actually used all of the existing washers and dryers in homes? And we actually shared our washers and dryers with our neighbors. We could start a whole washing and drying movement. It's a silly illustration, but think about it. What if we actually used what we had and we shared it with one another? Simple things grow, simple things multiply. Love God, love your neighbor. It's always relational before it's organizational. Administration and operations will emerge from decentralized networks of disciples, leaders, and churches, but you don't start with that. You'll see leadership emerge as elders, deacons, however you view that stuff. But you will have leadership that emerges, that are providing oversight, that are serving that way in a decentralized way across geographical areas, across ethno-linguistic boundaries, across socioeconomic boundaries, across ethno-linguistic boundaries, and it will always, 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 always be relational before it's organizational. Seventh thing, which is, this is, I think, like the culmination of John 17 for me, is we must all, I mean every one of us here and then across the whole world, okay? This is Jesus' prayer. We must all connect, communicate, and collaborate in love and unity until the whole world knows. I'll say it again. We must all, relationally, not organizationally, connect, communicate, and collaborate in love and unity as disciples in churches until the whole world knows. That's John chapter 17, where he says, I pray that they might all, everyone everywhere, dwell together in such perfect unity. Why? That the world might know the Father sent the Son. To actually see the kingdom of God, the ecclesia that Jesus died for, visible and proclaimed to every tribe, nation, language, and tongue. And guess what happens then? Jesus comes back. Let's get after it. Who's in? We get to do this. This is why we exist. Jesus slain before the foundation of the world. Man separated from God and redeemed through Jesus in the fullness of time. That is the sons and daughters of God, the children in the church. Manifest, visible, and heard relationally, connecting, communicating, collaborating freely. Just like we read about in the Bible. What a concept, huh? So sometimes, like, zero condemnation, like where I was at, like when I came to faith at 23, I was just like Frank. I was like, bro, when I read this doesn't look like that. I was confused as a termite in a yo-yo. Like, this doesn't look like that, man. And so I went through, this is all that I knew though. And it wasn't until inside of time that somebody shared with me, love God, love others, make disciples who do the same thing. But at that juncture, I was in my 50s, right? So I'm not condemning. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, like, hey, we can actually do this stuff with one another. Like, there's this other model that actually exists in other cities and places and one person that's been invited here to share. This exists in a Western context and in many other nations, okay? But I'd get this question. People go like, hey, well, that won't work in the United States. It does work in the United States. And it works in Muslim context. It works in Buddhist context. It works in atheist context. Shoot, it even works with left-handed plumbers. But it's not a pragmatic approach. In other words, like if you do this, like if it works, I'll do it. That's a bad question. Is it what he told us to do? Has he commanded us to make disciples of all nations and to train them to obey all his commandments with one another? That's all what it comes down to. And we do that in obedience to him by connecting with one another, by communicating and collaborating in love and unity as disciples in churches till the whole world knows. Last thing that I've learned, and it's the most, I've learned this one within the last year. So here it is. It didn't make the book because I just learned it. So number 8. If anybody wants to help me put this 8th thing inside of the book, okay, that's someone that has more administrative or operational capability than I do.
We can help you with
We can share, yeah. We can totally share, yeah. It's good. You know? I'll write it down. There you go. So we can model this right here, okay? Yes. good friend of mine, Doug Lucas with Team Expansion, said, Lee, have you written that stuff down? I'm like, sorta. He said, well, like, why don't you like sort of like write it down and we'll put it into an ebook for you. I never got this stuff in an ebook. Somebody else helped me to do that. We can help one another. So I think it's super cool, like this with Thrivent, with Luke 2, okay, with Logos, like even the model of this last one that we've been experiencing. So here it is. I'm going to try and say it in a complete sentence. Is we can collaborate with everyone everywhere at some level. We can collaborate with everyone everywhere at some level. We cannot collaborate with everyone everywhere at every level. It's unity isn't uniformity. So we can collaborate with everyone everywhere at some level, but we cannot collaborate with everyone everywhere at every level. Let me give you an illustration. So disasters happen around the world. Bad things happen to the nations. I just moved to Fort Myers, sold my home, moved to Fort Myers, opened a business there, and there was a horrible hurricane that happened there. Guess what? There were massive amounts of resources that flooded in to Fort Myers for relief, to help people, right? But those massive those came from people that are completely unbelievers that cared, okay? That's all good. You know, they wanted to like help. Praise God. Guess what? We totally collaborated as disciples and churches with those people, not just for the 2 to 3 months, okay, since then, but with the end of recovery in mind. Not only relief, but recovery. And we had a strategy of, hey, we can totally help people by putting tarps on roof and having our businesses as distribution centers. And those people said, hey, can we stage our trucks there? Absolutely, buddy. And we even viewed the people that we were collaborating with as potential disciples and leaders in churches because they were going to come in. And what if we actually trained them and we won people and they went back to their cities? What a concept that what the enemy might have meant for evil, that God meant for good to save much people alive. That's Genesis 50. Well, Romans 8's in there too. For we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. So we can totally collaborate locally, nationally, and globally with people that are providing relief, disaster relief, okay? Wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. Say, hey, we want to do the same thing. Man, we're totally the Trojan horse. I'm totally going into those organizations and like, yeah, we have a workforce to distribute those stuff and stuff. Hey, let me tell you my story. Yeah, I was an orphan. You know, I know what disaster is being dropped off at the orphanage, you know. And man, I was homeless. Like I know what it is to be homeless. I know what it is to be hungry. Somebody shared with me about Jesus. Changed my life when I was 23. So I really have a heart for feeding people, for providing water to them, for taking care of the homeless, you know, like the stuff we're doing. Because now I get to do that and pass it on to share to others. Do you have a story like that? Mm-hmm. Can you tell I've thought about this? Like it's a simple tool, a story inside a collaboration with people that are lost, or maybe they're even believers. But I'm looking intentionally to collaborate at whatever level that I can to work most closely with the people that want to multiply disciples, leaders, churches, and businesses so that we have a scaling ecosystem from micro to macro. Now, there's the 70 or 80% of the people in this room, okay, think way more granularly than I do. Because that's vision, right? That's vision. And you go like, man, vision is good. We got to have vision. But we have to be able to get down to the granular stuff. That emerges out of relationships, not organization. And it emerges as connecting, communicating, collaborating in love and unity with disciples and leaders in churches. But that level, like Sister just asked me, how can we collaborate inside of these things, inside my country? Absolutely. We can actually do that. We're not limited. So again, I made this picture like this. I made you do this, and I made you do this. If we are free enough to actually do this and be intentional about understanding that we can collaborate at many different levels with everyone everywhere and not be silos. I love you guys, okay? You're not the Lutheran silo. It's just husband and wife from your home, with your family. But we have silos, don't we? We have like the organizational silos, like the parachurch organizations, okay? And we have the denominational silos. And that's the opposite. The enemy always lies and divides from micro to macro. Because Jesus' prayer 3 times, and I'm done, he prays 3 times for the same thing, that we might be one, dwell together in perfect unity, connecting, communicating, collaborating, that the world might know. All the silos that divide us, the enemy is winning. For that white space to go away, to realize that the heart of God is for every person, every people, every place, to bow and confess that Jesus is Lord to the glory of God the Father. That's what we're supposed to be about. And I'll say again, you don't know me from Adam, okay? But you heard my story. And everything we have, from Tampa to Fort Myers and beyond, is we're honored to co-labor. We're on the same team, bringing it back to Larry. We are inclusive, not exclusive. Jesus is King. So I want to thank you guys for your time, for being invited to do this. And again, I left 15 minutes at the end to answer questions that you guys might have, because there takes 4 things to see a movement. So I'll share that with you and then take your questions. 4 things to see a movement. You have to have dissatisfaction with the present system. If you do not, I can't give that to you. Only God can. You have to have a measure of dissatisfaction with the present system. Did you ever think about this? The guy in hell, rich man and Lazarus, he says, hey, will you please send somebody to my 5 brothers so that they don't come to this awful place? I've shared with you the Father's heart today. For every person, every people, every place. God's heart. I think about this question. If we can't have the compassion of heaven, can we at least have the compassion of hell? So those things that are gaps for us, shortness of relational ties, really self-satisfied with where we're at in our country, okay? And the inertia of the present system, the prevailing model. We're not silos, we're not enemies, okay? We're not in competition. But the prevailing model actually impedes this other stuff. We have to be together. Like, we're co-laboring. So I can't give you that first one. That has to come from God. I pray that you might have gotten some of that today from God, that he might have used me. But I can help you with the next 2. You have to have, number 2, knowledge of a better way. Disciples, churches. Simple, multiplying. Disciples and churches. You have to have knowledge of a better way. No matter how bad it was, I gave you a little bit of that today, okay? Knowledge of a better way. 3rd, you have to have knowledge of first steps. I shared that with you today too. Hey, you got some simple tools? Why does God love me? Who should I share that with? Oh, I got a list of 20. How do I do that? Oh, I can tell my story, I can tell God's story. Oh, I got a little format to follow that we can do a discovery Bible study and ask questions and we can hear God and obey. I gave you 2 and 3 today. Knowledge of first steps, knowledge of a better way, knowledge of first steps. 4th thing is, I can't help you with either. God has to. You have to have the 1st and 4th I can't help you with. The 4th thing is, you have to have those first 3 things in greater measure than the inertia to continue in the status quo. Pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. That's sort of like, here you go. Now you got to do it. Dissatisfaction with the present system, knowledge of a better way, knowledge of first steps, greater than the inertia to continue in the status quo. To see a movement or a continuation of the movement of multiplying disciples, leaders, and churches. House to house, city to city, nation to nation. All right, 15 minutes. Questions? You don't feel like you have to ask them. We can get done early. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So, and I probably know the answer, but I want to hear you say it anyway. So, for a church like ours, we've been trying to do some of these things, actually trying to do all of them with limited success. What's your advice to us?
Keep doing what you're doing. You'll get better at it. So I'll give you another tool that I think is interesting, and I don't think we shared with it, but I think inside of the existing models of churches, the leadership cell is a great tool. So in other words, if you pick people from inside of the church, okay, and you went through the short-term discipleship series and you cast vision of, okay, look, there's 10 of us here, okay, 5 couples, okay, there's 10 of us. Now, we're only going to do this for a short period of time. This is not going to be an ongoing church, okay? But we're going to use this leadership cell, and the goal from here is for us actually to birth 5 simple churches inside of geographically where you live at, where you're going out and you're seeking to find the person of peace, okay, and to make one disciple. So you could actually, after 10 weeks, conceptually, okay, you could actually birth 5 simple churches in geographical areas, okay, and they could actually begin to obey in those areas. While you still have your centralized, within 10 weeks, you can launch a decentralized network of 5 house churches. Now, exhortation in Uganda, I did this with a pastor of a church that had maybe 50 people. And I get that Uganda is not Memphis, okay? Okay, so I understand. But the principles and the tools are the same. So there are literally, as of 2018 or 19, like 2,000 of those in a number of different villages, right? It will be harder here, because of every context has its challenges, okay? But I will say this, it was way harder in my gated community in Tampa than it was in the hood. So the first person of peace outside Amanda I found was Andre, Mama Net, and Andre in the University Mall area of Tampa. Pretty violent, gangs. But what we did is we found them. They said, come on in, man. I'll never forget the first 3/3 group that we did in Andre's house, man. Him and his nephew, they were blazing. You guys know what that is, right? They were smoking weed, okay? So me and my wife rolled on up in there, man. And Andre said, hey, man, these church people are going to come by, man. And his nephew said, we ain't changing. We ain't changing. So my wife I was acquainted with weed. Man, that billowed out, man. I'll never forget, there was this crackhead lady there, man, this refugee Vong student, okay, Andre and his nephew, man. And we sat down and we did Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. And there's light in that neighborhood now. There's a field in that neighborhood now. That house church is shared, okay? And there's a school in that neighborhood from there, man, for refugee students, okay? 22 nations in that apartment complex. Simple things grow. Simple things multiply. So all I'm saying, bro, to your question, to both of you guys, you got it. He gives the increase. Don't be discouraged. Be encouraged. Everything we have is yours. You're already bearing fruit. We're bearing fruit because you're trying, dude. That's powerful. It's the model. It's Memphis and Tampa, church of churches. It's Raheem. It's you guys. It's we. Look what Jesus is doing. See the bigger, like dream big, work small. Is that helpful? And I can help you with that. There's 2 great examples of this now in Topeka, Kansas, and in Denver. I can connect you to Ron Johnson that has a blended model that's actually working, Restoration Church, okay? And these are guys I discipled that I poured into, okay? So there's resources to share. Cool. Other questions? Yes, sir. Okay, I'll sit down. Oh, hang on. My bad. Test. Oh, I'm Frank.
I think it was November a year ago. The Pew Research Council, which probably most of you are familiar with, they're known to be a pretty fair-minded bunch. You know, they wouldn't have been in business for probably a quarter century. In any regard, they started out with the idea of counting the number of Christians in the United States of America. And to widen the scope as much as possible, they divided how they were going to count said Christians into 4 groups. First group was your every Sunday Christian. Second group was your Christmas and Easter folks. Third group was your weddings and funerals and baptisms group. Fourth group was people who call themselves Christians but never darken the door of a church. So using that preamble, I've heard 2 things today. One is based on growing the church by present relationships, one-on-one, disciples making disciples. You've done a very good job today reminding us of what that looks like. There's another theory, however, and it's called visioning. Visioning is something I can't get my arms around most of the time, because in the Christian community, that word means so many different things to so many different people. And I think, honestly, the denominational church is probably the leader, if you will, no matter what the denomination is, of that term visioning, which to a 77-year-old churchgoer all my life, I still can't get my arms around. Here's the question. How do you get those 2 concepts together to better serve God's church? How do you get the one-on-one disciples making disciples, which is the easier one, with the organized church, meet in the middle somewhere, or meet 2080 or 2575, but the end point is to grow God's church?
I got you. And I could actually draw the answer on, but I'm going to try and verbalize it, okay? So you got 2 legs, right? 2 legs. So the one approach, making disciples who make disciples, okay, you always have to have a model, right? So you're familiar with the bell curve, right? So you have 0 to nothing, completely harvest, to the institutionalized church. So the institutionalized church has got a lot of inertia. It's got a lot of hierarchy, okay? And it's got a lot of years, okay? It's easier to give birth than it is to raise the dead. So, one, if we have 80% of our weight on this thing that is most simple, and we trust Jesus and he begins to give the increase, and we're not shaking our fist at this other model because we love them, we honor them, we respect them. But the majority of our weight is over here in the harvest, or with people, like in the sense that they're far away from God, or they're believers and they actually come back to faith, okay? It's like as that begins to grow, we reach a point of where you have the midterm adopters and then maybe even the early, late-term adopters. The answer to your question is keep doing what you're doing from the harvest and work with 80% of your weight here in the harvest and 20% of your weight here. Because you have to have the emerging model. So I've only got 2 of those kinds of churches in the United States to share with you, okay? There are 400,000 churches in the United States, all Heinz 57 variety. I got 2 models right now to share with you. That doesn't discourage me. I'm not discouraged. But I got 80% of my weight here, or maybe 70. It was definitely like 90 at first, okay? But shoot, nobody would invite me to do this 10 years ago, bro. They wouldn't. So the answer is happening. It's in process. And the other thing is, I didn't share this, but I want to. Where'd my phone go? Oh, there it is. I gave you a lot of numbers, but here are the 8 elements of actually seeing it happen. The 8 elements or movements are these. So you can write these down if you want to, and it's part of the answer. Is to see that happen, we have to have 1, extraordinary prayer. That's an element of movement. 2, we have to have strategic planning of that, and that's sort of like micro to macro, and you actually have to have models, right, at the city level. You can come to Tampa every 6 weeks, and you can actually see a model of it. We need that in other cities. So that exists in Rochester now. It actually exists in Traverse City. It exists in San Francisco. It exists in Houston. People don't know that. Like people in the organizational model and stuff, they go like, this doesn't work in the United States. Where is that? We're real spread out like they were on the walls, okay? So that's where the connect, communicate, collaborate. There are thousands of these across our nation now. We're disjointed. So we have to have strategic planning. 3, we have to have abundant gospel sharing. Tell your story. Tell God's story. Jesus gives the increase. If we're not, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It's the power of God into salvation to the Jew first and also to the Greek. We got to share the gospel. 4, we have to find the persons of peace that God. So I believe there are pastors of peace. I didn't invite this guy to Tampa. He's somebody, I don't even know the guy that you talked to that told you about Tampa. And that's probably because like 3 things happen as we get older. First, we lose our memory. The other 2 you can't remember. That's me. But they showed up and then they invited us back. Like, so basically we have to find the pastors of peace in this side that are willing to say, all right, I get it. I get this way. And not pragmatic. We'll go the hard, pour deeply into the few who will obey no matter what the cost. Okay? 5, obedience-based discipleship. 6, simple churches. We can't be afraid of these. And so many pastors are afraid of these. They think that you're in competition with them, that you're going to be a sheep stealer. I'm not sheep stealing. Man, if I find anybody in the harvest that doesn't want to do this, man, I'm going to send them to your church. It's the truth. Priesthood of all believers. Everybody's supposed to obey. This stuff is in the Bible, bro. This is all in the Bible. I'm not a heretic. And 8, local leadership development, man. I'm going to pour gasoline on people like this dude, man. Like, I'm going to get him going to the Global Harvest Festival doing hip-hop. Like, I'm stoked about this stuff like this that happens. Everything I got's yours. Man, I want to help you in Kenya to do the same thing because we're on the same team. Like, only God could have made Larry do that devotion, man. Because I'll just ponder that thing, man. I'll just ponder it. So inside of there is the answer to your question. I'm sorry I rambled.
Just one, am I still on the mic? Yeah. Just one follow-up at the risk of repeating myself. This same poll showed us that only 47% of the Americans polled claimed a relationship to any of those 4 categories. That is an all-time low for a country, the only country in history founded on Judeo-Christian principles. It's in the preambles of all 50 states of the United States of America. So what is the most influential body of America? At 47%, it's still the church. The question is, what do we have to do differently to change that ratio between what I would call the organized denominational church and the church that you describe as an entity that disciples are making disciples as its basic purpose?
Yeah. So I think it's worse, actually, than that. And I think it's declining rapidly. And, it's in the Bible too. A hoary head is a crown if it be found in the way of righteousness. We have to have older models, like aged men and women, some more aged than others. But we have to have aged examples. We have to have young men and young women, and we have to have children that actually model that not in an institutional way, but in a community way with one another. And that's the challenge of our nation, man. And so, but we can totally do that. We can totally say, I can do that for my neighborhood. I can do that with the people outside my door in my community, and that's what I'm doing for my house. Like, I'm 63 years old. I'm not thinking about retirement, man. My wife and I just started a business to model business incubatorship of what that is to have scaling, sustainable disciples, leaders, and churches across a smaller footprint. Fort Myers is only 80,000 people. The county is 800,000 people, okay? But it's called Lee County. I have my own county. So, Lee County. You guys pray for Lee County, okay? Okay. But it's a micro model, right? And that's the same thing, Doc, that you get to do with your bride from your marriage in both places. It's super cool. I'm honored to co-labor.